The bell in the big house struck once, and Mrs. Rowena Clay fell to her knees exactly as I promised she would. Not because a ghost had touched her, not because my ancestors had reached through the wall and dragged her down, but because 7 nights earlier, after she killed my daughter and called it discipline, I looked into her face and told her the truth in the only language she was frightened enough to hear. I told her she had 7 nights left. My name is Nalah Reed. For 22 years, Greywater Hall called me its healer when their children burned with fever, its nurse when their babies would not breathe, and its witch when my knowledge made them uncomfortable. They were right to be uncomfortable, because knowledge is a blade when the person holding it has nothing left to lose. And Mrs. Clay did not die from a curse. She died from the house she loved more than human life. But before I tell you how I made a white woman count the nights until her own walls finished killing her, you must know what she took from me. Greywater Hall sat low in the salt marsh beyond Savannah, where the rice fields shone like broken mirrors, and the air tasted of mud, sweat, and rot. The white family called it beautiful. We called it a place where water learned to obey men, and men forgot God was watching. My daughter Sira was 17. She had her father's height, my mother's eyes, and a way of walking like no chain had ever understood her. The house women hated that about her. Even when she bowed, she did not shrink. That morning, the trouble began over a porcelain cup. Not a stolen jewel. Not a missing coin. A cup. Mrs. Clay's favorite cup had slipped from the pantry shelf and cracked against the floor. Sira had been the one sweeping nearby, so Sira became the crime. That was how power worked in Greywater Hall. The truth did not matter. Only who was convenient to punish. I was in the drying room, tying bundles of feverfew and marsh mint, when I heard the first shout. Then the second. Then the sound every enslaved mother knows before her mind admits it. A crowd being gathered. When I reached the yard, they had tied Sira to the post beside the bell frame. Her dress was torn at the shoulder. Her chin was high. Her eyes found mine, and for one breath she was still my little girl, barefoot in river mud, asking if the moon could hear secrets. Mrs. Rowena Clay stood on the veranda in her green silk gown, one hand resting against her throat, as if violence made her delicate. "Let every soul here learn," she said, "that careless hands must be taught their place." Master Clay stood behind her. He looked away. Men like him always looked away and called it mercy. The overseer lifted the switch. "I will not make you listen to every strike." I heard them. That is enough. I heard my daughter breathe through pain, until breath became a sound she could no longer shape. I heard Mrs. Clay order the punishment, continued, when even the overseer hesitated. I heard the yard go silent, before anyone dared say she was gone. There are silences that do not mean peace. That silence was a door opening. The women beside me began to weep without sound. Old Abram lowered his head. Even the horses in the stable stamped and pulled against their ropes, as if the air itself had changed. Mrs. Clay looked down at my daughter's body and said, "Take that away." That, not her, not the girl, that. Something inside me became still. For years, I had swallowed grief until it turned into usefulness. I had delivered their babies, cooled their fevers, set their bones, soothed their headaches, and listened to their secrets while they forgot I had ears. I had watched Mrs. Clay grow weaker in the very room she loved most, watched her fingertips tremble after long afternoons surrounded by that imported green wallpaper she bragged about to every visitor. The room had arrived from Europe in crates, all emerald vines and shining leaves, brighter than any marsh grass after rain. She called it refinement. I called it a warning. because I had seen what that color did. I had seen a seamstress cough after working with the same bright pigment. I had seen a child sicken beside a painted toy. I had watched Mrs. Clay's headaches, stomach pains, twitching hands, and sleepless terror build for months. While Dr. Vane called it nerves, and Master Clay called it feminine weakness, I knew before any of them knew. Her beloved green room was not luxury. It was a slow grave. For weeks I had kept her alive without her understanding it. I opened windows when she forgot. I moved her tea to the veranda. I sent servants in with errands to interrupt her long hours among those walls. Then she killed Sira, and I stopped protecting her. When they cut my daughter's body down, I stepped forward. Every eye in that yard turned to me. Mrs. Clay's mouth tightened, already preparing the next cruelty. I took the blue mourning thread from my sleeve and wrapped it around my palm until it bit into the skin. Then I pressed that hand to the post, where Sira's fingers had strained against the wood. "Rowena Clay," I said, and my voice did not shake. "You have spilled a daughter's life over a broken cup. Now the house you built on our backs will answer you." She laughed once. A short, sharp sound. I raised my eyes to the veranda. "7 nights," I said. "Before the next Sunday bell, you will beg the dead to stop looking at you. You will call my name. You will learn that walls can remember blood." The yard stopped breathing. Mrs. Clay stepped down from the veranda, her green skirts whispering against the boards. "You think your island muttering can touch me?" "No," I said. "I think you have already been touched." That was the first time fear crossed her face, not much, a flicker, but I saw it. I had not given her magic. I had given her a clock, and once fear starts counting, it does not stop. They whipped me before sunset, 15 strokes for insolence. I remember the sky more than the pain. It was the color of old iron, and the herons were flying low over the flooded fields. That night, the quarters filled with whispers. Some asked if I had truly called the dead, some asked if the old spirits would walk across the marsh. Some begged me to take the words back before the Clays punished us all. Only Abram sat beside me long enough to hear the truth. "Child," he said, though I was nearly 40, "what did you put on her?" "Nothing," I told him. His eyes narrowed. "Then what did you do?" I looked toward the big house, where one upstairs window glowed green through the dark. I stopped saving her from herself. Abram understood then. He had watched me watch that room. He had carried crates from the dock and coughed from the dust of their fancy paper. He knew the difference between a spirit and a sickness. "Will she die?" "If she stays in that room," I said, "yes." "And will she stay?" I heard Mrs. Clay's voice in my memory, proud and brittle. "My green room. My private room. My proof that Greywater is not some swamp house." "She will," I said. Because I told her not to fear it. On the first day, Mrs. Clay made a performance of being well. She walked through the yard after breakfast wearing the same green gown, pale face powdered smooth, Bible in hand like a weapon. "Superstition is for weak minds," she announced. "No Christian woman trembles because a servant has lost her senses." No one answered. I was kneeling by the wash basin, cleaning linen. I kept my eyes low, but I saw her fingers twitch against the Bible cover. I saw the sweat on her upper lip though the morning was cool. That afternoon, she locked herself in the green room. It was exactly what I expected. People do not prove they are unafraid by avoiding the thing that frightens them. They prove it by walking straight into it and daring their own terror to follow. By evening, she had a headache. On the second day, she refused breakfast. Her maid said the mistress had spent the night pacing,
opening and closing drawers, accusing the mirror of shifting when she was not looking. Master Clay sent for Dr. Vane. The doctor arrived in a black coat damp from marsh fog, carrying a leather case and the confidence of a man paid to be certain. He listened to her chest. He pressed 2 fingers to her wrist. He asked whether she had been agitated. "Of course I am agitated," Mrs. Clay snapped. "A slave woman cursed me in my own yard." Dr. Vane gave a soft laugh. Watched him study the green walls. Just for a moment. Then he looked away. That was what frightened me most about white men with schooling. Sometimes they saw the edge of the truth, and chose comfort instead. He prescribed rest. Mrs. Clay chose the green room. On the 3rd night she began to hear Sirrah. "Not truly. I do not claim my daughter wasted heaven frightening a murderer. But guilt has its own voice." The mistress woke the house screaming that someone was tapping on the walls. Master Clay ran barefoot into the hall. The servants gathered at the stairs, eyes wide, lamps shaking in their hands. "It was the girl," Mrs. Clay cried. "She was inside the paper. I heard her nails." No one spoke. Rain scratched the shutters. The green wallpaper shone in the lamplight as if wet. Master Clay sent for the preacher before dawn. Reverend Pike came with a silver cross and a book of prayers. He sprinkled water, spoke over thresholds, and declared the household protected by the Lord. Mrs. Clay clung to his sleeve. "Then why do I still feel watched?" The Reverend had no answer. "I did. Because power had taught her that the people she hurt could not look back. Now, for the first time in her life, she felt seen by someone she could not command. By the 4th day, her hands shook too badly to hold a cup. No one spoke of my curse in the big house, but everyone moved around it. The kitchen girls crossed themselves before climbing the stairs. The coachman would not pass the green room after sundown. Even Master Clay stopped drinking before noon and started praying with his eyes open. He summoned me late that afternoon. I found him in the parlor with the curtains drawn, a glass untouched beside him. "Nalah," he said, and my name sounded strange in his mouth. Not barked, not ordered, almost asked. "If there is something you can do for my wife, do it." I looked at him for a long moment. "This house has never asked what I could do," I said. "It only took what it needed." His jaw tightened. "Do not play games." "I am not playing." "Then save her." The word save hung between us like smoke. I thought of Sirrah's face in the yard. I thought of all the babies I had saved for women who would grow up to own other women's babies. I thought of Mrs. Clay saying, "Take that away." "No," I said. Master Clay stared at me as if I had changed shape in front of him. "You refuse." "I refuse. You know I can have you punished." "You can," I said. "But punishment is not power. If it were, your wife would not be upstairs counting nights." He went gray. That was the moment he believed. Not in spirits. Not exactly. He believed that I knew something he did not, and that was worse for him. On the 5th day, Mrs. Clay stopped pretending. She ordered every mirror covered, then uncovered, then covered again.
The servants strip the bed, beat the rugs, shake out every curtain. She claimed the green vines on the wall had moved while she slept. Master Clay begged her to leave the room. She slapped him. "I will not be chased from my own house by a dead kitchen girl." But she did not say Sirrah's name. People like Rowena Clay feared names. Names made the dead human. That evening, I stood in the herb yard beneath a moon thin as a fishbone. Abram came beside me. "She is failing," he said. "Yes." "Does it bring you peace?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted vengeance to feel clean. Instead, I looked down at the morning thread still wrapped around my wrist. "It brings a shape to the pain," I said. "That is not the same thing." On the 6th day, the doctor returned with another man from Savannah, younger, sharper, smelling of tobacco and rain. They argued in low voices outside the green room. I heard enough. Bad air. Pigment. Nerves. Impossible. Too late. Those were the words educated men used when truth embarrassed them. Mrs. Clay was no longer laughing. She lay in bed beneath the green paper, skin waxen, lips dry, eyes fixed on the ceiling where painted vines twisted into a crown above her head. When I entered with fresh water, she seized my wrist. Her grip was weak, but desperation made it cruel. "Take it back," she whispered. I looked at her hand on mine. "Take what back?" "The curse. The curse is only the name you gave the truth." Her eyes filled with panic. "I am sorry." For one heartbeat, the room seemed to lean toward me. There are apologies made to heal, and there are apologies made because the door is locked and fire is coming. "Say her name," I told her. Mrs. Clay's lips trembled. "The girl," she said. "Her name." She shut her eyes. I waited. "Sira," she breathed. It was the first honest thing I had ever heard from her mouth. But it did not raise my daughter. "The dead have heard you," I said. "Now you must hear them." When I left the room, she began to sob. The seventh night came under a storm. All day the marsh had been holding its breath. The sky lowered. The rice fields darkened. Even the cicadas seemed to wait. By sunset, everyone at Greywater Hall knew. Not because I had spoken again. I did not need to. The curse had become the house's heartbeat. 7 nights. Before the Sunday bell, Master Clay ordered the bell rope cut so it could not be rung. That almost made me smile. Men who think they own time are always surprised when time does not ask permission. Near midnight, lightning struck somewhere beyond the mill, and the house shook hard enough to wake the quarters. A child cried out. A woman began to pray. Then came the sound from the big house. Not a scream. A bell. One clear strike. No one had pulled the rope. The storm had thrown a broken branch through the frame, and the old bell answered like iron remembering its purpose. I walked through the rain toward the house. No one stopped me. The front doors stood open. Lamps burned everywhere. Servants lined the hall, faces bright with fear. Master Clay knelt outside the green room, soaked in sweat, saying his wife's name over and over. Inside, Mrs. Rowena Clay was on the floor beneath her emerald walls. She was not beautiful. She was not powerful. She was not chosen by God. She was a frightened woman in a room that had been killing her while she called it elegance. Her eyes rolled toward the doorway. She saw me, or she saw what her guilt had made of me. "Nalah," she gasped. Then, with a terror so deep it seemed to tear her open from the inside, she whispered, "Sira is standing behind you." I did not turn around. I did not need to know whether it was true. Mrs. Clay died before the echo of the bell left the hall. For a long time, nobody moved. Then Master Clay looked at the walls. Really looked. At the green paper curling in the damp. At the dust gathered along the seams. At the room his wife had loved. The room she would not leave. The room I had tried to keep her from, until she taught me mercy had limits. He understood enough to fear the rest. They buried Rowena Clay 2 days later, in a dry patch of family ground above the marsh. The preacher spoke of providence. Dr. Vane wrote something careful in his book. The neighbors whispered curse, judgment, fever, poison, madness, depending on what they needed to believe before sleeping that night. But at Greywater Hall, the truth moved faster than horses. The enslaved knew I had spoken death, and death had obeyed. The white families knew the same, though they dressed their fear in better words. 3 days after the funeral, Master Clay called me into the study. He had aged 10 years in a week. The room smelled of paper, wax, and fear. "I want you gone," he said. "I know." He slid a folded document across the desk. Manumission. My freedom. Written in a hand that had once listed human beings beside livestock and tools. "You will leave Georgia," he said. "You will not return to Greywater. You will not speak of my wife." I looked at the paper, then at him. "I will speak of my daughter." His mouth tightened, but he did not argue. Fear had taught him what conscience never could. I asked for my satchel, my herbs, my mother's shell comb, Syrah's blue ribbon, and a letter naming me a skilled nurse and midwife for any free-colored community that would take me in. He gave me all of it. At dawn, I walked out through the marsh road while the rice fields smoked with mist. Behind me, Greywater Hall stood pale and quiet, its green room shuttered, its bell still cracked from the storm. I carried no weapon. Only grief. Only the name of my daughter, wrapped in blue thread around my wrist. People later said I cursed Rowena Clay. Some said I called spirits from the marsh. Some said my daughter pulled the bell herself. Some said the walls bled green after I left. Though people do love to decorate the truth once fear has made room for it. Here is what happened. A woman who believed herself untouchable built her throne inside a slow poison and called it refinement. A woman she enslaved understood the danger and kept saving her, quietly, invisibly, without thanks. Then, that same mistress murdered the healer's child, and discovered that mercy is not an endless well. I did not need the world to believe in my power. I needed one house to believe it. I needed one master to understand that the people he owned were not empty hands and bent backs. We were memory. We were skill. We were witnesses. We knew where the rot lived because we were the ones forced to clean around it. And sometimes, when justice is locked out of the courthouse, it enters through the walls. So remember Syrah, not as the girl they tied to a post over a broken cup. Remember her as the name Rowena Clay could not say until fear made her honest. Remember her as the reason the green room became a grave. And remember this, the powerful are most afraid of curses when they know they have earned them.